The alarm screamed across the bridge of the command ship. Commander Al gripped the railing as another explosion rocked the vessel. Through the viewing screen, he watched his home world burn. Prime had stood for 10,000 years. The capital world of the collective was a jewel among the stars, with crystal cities that touched the clouds and oceans that sparkled like diamonds. Now, those cities were ash. The oceans boiled under enemy fire. The scourge had come 3 months ago. They arrived without warning, without mercy. Their black ships poured through the outer systems like a plague, destroying everything in their path. The fleet had tried to stop them. They failed. Al's people were builders, not warriors. For thousands of years, they had lived in peace. They created beautiful art, studied the mysteries of the universe, and helped other species grow. War was something they read about in ancient history files. They had shields and defense systems, but they had never truly learned to fight. The Scourge knew how to fight. They lived for it. "Commander, the eastern defense grid is collapsing," his officer reported. Her voice shook with fear. "We have maybe 2 hours before they reach the evacuation zones." 2 hours. Millions of civilians were still on the planet's surface, trying to escape on transport ships. The fleet was down to 15 vessels. The Scourge had over 300. Al had watched good soldiers die today. He had given orders that sent ships to their doom, buying minutes for civilians to flee. Nothing had worked. The Scourge were too strong, too many, too ruthless. They did not accept surrender. They did not take prisoners. They only destroyed. "Send another request to the Galactic Council," Al ordered. "Tell them we need help immediately." His communications officer looked at him with sad eyes. "Commander, the Council sent their response an hour ago. They expressed their sympathy. They said they cannot interfere in the conflict." Sympathy? The Council offered words while his people died. The great civilizations of the galaxy sat in their safe systems and did nothing. They would negotiate with the Scourge after they were gone. They would make deals and treaties over the graves of his race. Al felt something break inside him, not his spirit, his patience. "I need all our old survey files," he said quietly. "Everything from the restricted archives, specifically the files on quarantined species." His officers looked at each other nervously. The quarantined files were forbidden. The Galactic Council had sealed away information about dangerous species, worlds too violent or unstable to contact. Opening those files was against every law and protocol. But what did laws matter when your world was dying? The archivist brought up the files. There were 7 quarantined species in the database. Most were primitive, stuck in their early development. One had destroyed itself in nuclear war. 2 others were deemed too aggressive for contact. Then saw it, Sol system, 3rd planet species, human. The file was marked with red warnings. "Do not approach, do not contact, extreme danger." The notes described a species that fought wars over everything: resources, territory, ideas, pride. They had split the atom and immediately used it to kill each other. They had reached their own moon and planted flags, claiming territory in space. The Galactic Council had watched humanity for centuries. They had seen humans fight with swords, then guns, then missiles. Every time humans invented something new, they turned it into a weapon. When the Council finally made contact 30 years ago, they had been horrified. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. The Council had established a quarantine barrier around the Sol system. No ships in, no ships out. Humanity was locked away, isolated from the galaxy. The official reason was for their own protection and development. The real reason was fear. The galaxy was afraid of what humans might do if they were allowed to spread to the stars. Al read the tactical assessments. Human military doctrine was brutal and direct. They used kinetic weapons, chemical explosives, and something called combined arms warfare. They fought on the ground, in close combat, with a disregard for casualties that shocked the analysts. Where other species tried to minimize losses, humans seemed to accept that war meant death. One report noted, humans possess an unusual psychological trait. When cornered or threatened, they become more dangerous, not less. They do not retreat according to logical tactical necessity. They fight harder when losing. Another note was even more disturbing. Human cultures glorify warfare. They write songs about battles, build monuments to soldiers, and tell stories of victories to their children. War is woven into their identity. The Galactic Council had decided that such a species should never be allowed to leave their system. They were too primitive, too savage, too willing to fight. The galaxy needed peace and order, not chaos. But Al did not need peace right now. He needed warriors. "Open a transmission to Sol system," he ordered. "All frequencies, maximum power." "Commander, that is forbidden. The Council." "The Council is letting us die," Al shouted. The bridge fell silent. He had never raised his voice before. "They sit safely in their chambers while the scourge burns our children. I will not wait for their permission to save my people." The communications officer hesitated, then activated the array. A channel opened across the light years, piercing through the quarantine barrier. It would take time for the message to reach Earth, more time for them to respond, time they did not have. Al spoke into the void, hoping someone would hear. "This is Commander Al of the Collective. Our world is under attack. We are dying. The Galactic Council has abandoned us. We have nowhere else to turn." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "We know you were isolated. We know you were judged dangerous, but we need that danger now. We need soldiers. We need warriors. Please, if you can hear this, help us." He ended the transmission and looked at his crew. They stared back at him with mixed expressions: hope, fear, desperation. "Will they come?" someone asked. Al did not know. Humanity had been caged for decades, treated like animals too wild to trust. Would they help the same species that had locked them away? Or would they ignore the plea and let them burn? Another explosion rocked the ship. The scourge were getting closer. Time was running out. All Al could do was wait and hope that somewhere in that distant yellow star system, someone was listening. Someone who knew how to fight. Someone willing to face the darkness that was swallowing his world. Someone willing to become the monster they needed. The message arrived at Pacific Command at 3:42 hours. Lieutenant Park was halfway through her night shift when the deep space array picked up the signal. At first, she thought it was a malfunction. The signal came from beyond the quarantine barrier, the invisible wall that had surrounded Earth for 30 years. Nothing was supposed to get through that barrier. She ran the diagnostics 3 times before accepting that the signal was real. Then she read the translation and immediately called her commanding officer. Within 20 minutes, the message was on the desk of every military leader on Earth. By dawn, President was reading it in the Oval Office. "They want our help," General said, standing across from the President's desk. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from the Mars conflicts. "The same aliens who locked us in this system like criminals. Now they come begging." President read the message again. The desperation in it was clear. An entire civilization was dying, crying out to anyone who would listen, even to the species they had deemed too dangerous to contact. "What do we know about the?" asked. "Not much, sir. The Council gave us basic information when they first made contact, then cut us off. They are one of the founding species of the Galactic Council, peaceful, advanced, focused on science and art. No real military capability." General pulled up a hologram showing the system. "According to the message, they are facing something called the Scourge. We have no data on them. And they want us to fight their war." "Yes, sir." Stood and walked to the window. Outside, the lights of the city sparkled in the darkness. 30 years ago, when the aliens had first arrived, Earth had been excited. First contact. Proof that humanity was not alone. The governments of Earth had prepared for trade, cultural exchange, and partnership among the stars. Instead, the Galactic Council had looked at humanity and been horrified. They saw the wars, the weapons, the history of violence. They saw a species that had nearly destroyed itself a dozen times but somehow kept surviving. The Council decided that humans were too dangerous to join galactic civilization. The quarantine had been established. Energy barriers surrounded the Sol system, preventing any ship from entering or leaving. The Council said it was for Earth's protection, to let humanity develop in peace. But everyone knew the truth. It was a cage. The insult had burned. Earth had been judged and found wanting, locked away like a dangerous animal. For 30 years, humanity had watched the stars and known that somewhere out there, advanced civilizations were thriving without them. Now those same civilizations needed help. "Assemble the Joint Chiefs," said. "I want options in 3 hours." The meeting room was full of the most powerful military leaders on Earth: admirals, generals, intelligence directors. Colonel Jin stood among them, called in from the 3rd Marine Division. At 43, Jin had fought in more conflicts than most of the younger officers combined. He had a quiet intensity that made people listen when he spoke. "This is politics," one admiral argued. "They insult us for decades, then expect us to die for them. We should ignore the message." "We could use this as leverage," another suggested. "Help them, but demand the Council end the quarantine. Make them give us full membership." "Or we could just help them," Jin said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "They are dying. That is the only fact that matters." "Colonel, they treated us like animals." "Yes, they did, and that was wrong." Jin stepped forward to the holographic display showing Prime under attack. "But we do not make decisions based on pride. We make them based on what is right. These aliens are peaceful people facing extinction. If we can help, we should." General studied Jin carefully. "You think we can make a difference? We have never fought against alien technology. We do not know what we are facing." "We know how to fight," Jin replied. "That is what they need." President listened to the arguments for 2 hours. Finally, he made his decision. "We will respond, not for politics, not for revenge, but because it is the right thing to do." He looked at General, "Put together a response force. Fast, mobile, and ready for anything." "How many troops, sir?" "Enough to matter. 2,000 Marines are best." The room erupted in discussion. 2,000 seemed like such a small number against an alien invasion. But Earth's military had learned long ago that numbers alone did not win battles. Training, tactics, and the will to fight mattered more. "Colonel Jin," the president said, "you will command the mission." Jin nodded once. He had expected this. "Yes, sir." "You will have full authority to engage the enemy as you see fit. Your mission is simple: save thee if you can. More importantly, show the galaxy what humanity is capable of." The next 72 hours were chaos. Jin selected his troops personally. He wanted experienced soldiers, people who had seen real combat and would not panic when facing the unknown. Staff Sergeant made the list. She was tough, smart, and had a talent for thinking on her feet. Lieutenant Sung, captain, and dozens of others joined what would be called the First Contact Battalion. The troops assembled at the lunar shipyards, where Earth's warships waited. The vessels looked crude compared to what little humanity had seen of alien technology. No smooth curves or glowing energy fields. Just angular hulls covered in armor plating, massive engines, and weapons that fired physical projectiles. The flagship was named Soul's Hammer. Jin stood on its bridge, watching his Marines board the transport ships. They carried rifles that used gunpowder and metal bullets. They had grenades filled with chemical explosives. Their armor was ceramic and steel, not energy shields. By galactic standards, everything they had was primitive. But these weapons had one advantage: they worked. Humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of killing each other. Every rifle had been tested in real combat. Every tactic had been learned through blood and failure. Where they had theories, humans had experience. "Do you think we can win, sir?" asked, standing beside Jin on the observation deck. "I think we can fight," Jin replied. "That might be enough." The fleet launched on schedule. 20 warships, 2,000 Marines, and enough ammunition to level a small city. As they accelerated toward the edge of the solar system, they passed through the quarantine barrier. It flickered and died, unable to stop ships pushing from the inside. For the first time in 30 years, humanity broke free of its cage. The journey to space would take 3 weeks at maximum speed. Jin used the time to train his troops and study what little data they had on the enemy. The Scourge seemed to prefer energy weapons and drone warfare. They relied on shields and superior numbers. Jin smiled at that. Humans had fought against superior numbers before. They had learned to adapt, to improvise, to turn enemy advantages into weaknesses. "They think technology wins wars," he told his officers. "We will show them it does not. Will, courage, and the refusal to surrender, those win wars." 3 weeks later, the fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Sensors immediately detected hundreds of enemy vessels and a planet under siege. The battle had already been decided, or so it seemed. But the Scourge had made one critical mistake. They had never fought humans before. Jin opened a channel to all ships. "First Contact Battalion, this is Colonel Jin. We did not come here to run. We did not come here to hide. We came here to fight. Show them what Earth sends when the galaxy asks for warriors." The fleet accelerated toward the battle, and humanity's war among the stars began. Commander Al had stopped believing the humans would come. 3 weeks had passed since he sent the desperate message. 3 weeks of watching his fleet die, his world burn, his people evacuate on whatever ships could still fly. Only 8 vessels remained operational, limping through space as the Scourge tightened their grip. Then the sensors detected something new. "Commander, we have multiple contacts entering the system," his officer reported. "Unknown configuration. They are not Scourge." Al felt a spike of hope, quickly crushed by reality. Probably more refugees from the outer colonies. Redirect them to Evacuation Zone 7. "Sir, these ships are not running. They are accelerating toward the battle." That made no sense. No one accelerated toward the Scourge. Even the bravest captains knew when to retreat. Al pulled up the sensor data and froze. 20 vessels, crude and blocky, moving at aggressive speed directly into the combat zone. "Are they insane?" someone whispered. Al recognized the design from the old files. Human ships, they had actually come. A communication channel opened. A voice spoke in clear Galactic Standard, the words translated but the tone unmistakable. Calm, professional, confident. "Fleet, this is Colonel Jin of the Earth Expeditionary Force. We received your message. We are here to help." Al felt something strange in his chest. Hope, real hope for the first time in weeks. But doubt followed quickly. 20 ships against the Scourge Armada. It was suicide. "Colonel Jin, we are grateful truly. But you must understand the situation. The Scourge has over 200 vessels in this system. They have superior shields, advanced weapons, and—" "Commander, with respect, we did not come here for a tactical briefing. We came here to fight. Designate your priority targets and clear our firing lanes." Before Al could respond, the human fleet split into 4 groups. They moved with precision, ignoring the accepted combat formations. The Scourge noticed the new arrivals and adjusted their formation. 50 Scourge vessels broke off from the main fleet and moved to intercept the humans. Al watched the sensors in horror. The Scourge ships were faster, better armed, and their energy shields could withstand sustained fire from weapons. The humans were outnumbered and— Then the shooting started. The Scourge fired first, as they always did. Bright blue energy beams lanced across space, striking the lead human ships. Al expected to see the vessels vaporize or at least retreat. Instead, the human ships took the hits. Their hulls glowed white-hot under the bombardment. Armor plating burned away, but the ships kept coming. They did not slow down. They did not evade. They simply endured and advanced. "What are they doing?" Al's weapons officer asked in disbelief. The human ships closed to what would consider suicide range. Then they returned fire. The sound came through the sensor feeds as vibrations, massive kinetic impacts that registered on every instrument. Metal slugs, fired at incredible speeds, crossed the distance in seconds. The Scourge shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, meant nothing against solid projectiles. The first Scourge ship simply broke apart. The slug punched through its shield, through its hull, and out the other side, ripping the vessel open like paper. Explosions blossomed in the void. 3 more Scourge ships died in the next minute. The enemy formation scattered in confusion. Their weapons were still superior, still doing damage to the human ships, but it did not matter. The humans kept fighting, kept firing, kept closing the distance. Al realized something shocking. The humans were not trying to win an elegant battle. They were brawling, trading hits, accepting damage, and trusting their hulls to hold together long enough to destroy the enemy. "They are using their ships as shields," someone said in awe. "They are protecting their weapons with their own hulls." It was barbaric, it was brutal, it was working. The Scourge flagship tried to rally its forces, but then something even more shocking happened. Small objects launched from the human vessels, moving at high speed, boarding pods. "They are attempting boarding actions," Al said in disbelief, "in the middle of a fleet engagement." The pods crashed into Scourge vessels, latching onto hulls with magnetic clamps. Explosive charges blew airlocks open, and humans poured inside. Lieutenant Sung led the first breach. His pod had hit a Scourge cruiser near the engineering section. The shaped charge melted through the airlock, and Sung's squad of 12 Marines charged through the gap. The interior of the Scourge ship was dark, lit by bioluminescent panels. The air was thick and smelled of sulfur. Sung activated his helmet light and pushed forward. Behind him, his squad moved in practiced formation. They had trained for ship breaching on Earth. Old cargo vessels had been converted into training grounds, forcing Marines to fight in tight corridors where every corner could hide an enemy. Sung had done this 100 times in training. He had never done it against aliens. The first Scourge warrior appeared around a corner. It was huge, maybe 8 feet tall, with a body covered in armored plates. 4 arms ended in claws and integrated plasma weapons. The creature hissed and raised its weapons. Sung fired first. 3 shots center mass. The bullets punched through the chitin armor and the creature collapsed. His squad moved past the body, securing the corridor. More Scourge appeared. The Marines used grenades to clear junctions, rifle fire to suppress enemy positions, and constant movement to stay ahead of the defenders. The Scourge were strong and well-armed, but they fought like individuals. The Marines fought as a unit. "Frag out," someone called. A grenade bounced around a corner and detonated. The Marines moved through the smoke, firing at anything that moved. They reached the engineering section in 12 minutes. Sung placed charges on the reactor controls and set a timer. "Fall back, 30 seconds." The squad retreated the way they came, fighting through Scourge reinforcements. They reached their boarding pod with seconds to spare. As the pod launched away from the ship, the charges detonated. The Scourge cruiser's reactor went critical, and the entire vessel exploded. Staff Sergeant's squad had an easier time. They had boarded a Scourge troop carrier, a lightly armed vessel full of soldiers meant for planetary assault. The Scourge warriors were trained for ground combat, not ship defense. Moved through the corridors with controlled aggression, her squad clearing rooms with brutal efficiency. The Scourge tried to set up defensive positions, but human tactics had been refined over centuries of urban warfare. Smoke grenades, suppressing fire and flanking maneuvers overwhelmed the defenders. Secured Sector 3, reported over the comm. Enemy resistance minimal. Recommend we capture this vessel intact. Colonel Jin approved the recommendation. Within an hour, the troop carrier was under human control. Squad guarded Scourge prisoners in the cargo bay while other Marines took control of the bridge. Across the battlefield, the story repeated. Human boarding parties seized 6 Scourge vessels. 3 more were destroyed from the inside. The Scourge fleet, facing an enemy that fought in ways they had never encountered, began to pull back. Commander Al watched the battle with growing amazement. The humans had lost 4 ships and taken heavy damage across the fleet. By any logical measure, they had suffered greater losses than the Scourge. But they had won. The Scourge to a safe distance, regrouping near Prime's second moon. They had never retreated before. They had never needed to. Colonel Jin's face appeared on Al's screen. The human looked tired but satisfied. Commander, we have secured this sector. What is your status? We are operational. Colonel, I must ask, how did you do that? Your technology is less advanced. Your ships are slower. You should have lost. Jin smiled slightly. Commander, we did lose. We lost ships and good people, but we completed the mission. That is all that matters. But the Scourge outnumbered you. They had better weapons. Technology does not win battles, Commander. Soldiers do. And humans have been soldiers for a very long time. Al looked at the tactical display. The Scourge were regrouping, but they were cautious now. They had learned that humans were dangerous. More importantly, they had learned that humans did not fight the way other species did. Humans did not calculate acceptable losses and retreat. They set their goal and achieved it, no matter the cost. For the first time since the invasion began, Al believed they might survive. Ha studied the tactical reports with growing anger. The humans had been in the system for only 6 hours, and they had already disrupted everything. 9 Scourge vessels destroyed or captured, 53 warriors dead, the entire fleet forced into a defensive position. It was unacceptable. Ha was a veteran of 20 conquest campaigns. He had crushed civilizations that had ruled the stars for. His tactics were proven, his forces superior in every measurable way. The humans possessed inferior ships, primitive weapons, and laughable numbers. Yet they had won the first engagement. Analyze their combat patterns, Ha ordered his tactical officer. Find their weakness. The analysis came back within the hour. The report confused more than it clarified. The humans fought with reckless aggression, accepting damage that would force any rational commander to retreat. They used kinetic weapons that bypassed energy shields. They boarded ships in the middle of fleet combat, an action so dangerous that no modern military doctrine even considered it. Most disturbing, they seemed to have no fear of death. They are irrational, Ha decided. Irrational opponents can be defeated through superior numbers and firepower. We will crush them with overwhelming force. The Scourge fleet regrouped near Prime's second moon. 300 vessels, the full might of the invasion force. Against this armada, the humans had 16 operational ships. The mathematics were clear. The humans would be destroyed. Ha ordered the attack at dawn. Colonel Jin watched the enemy fleet approach on his tactical display. 300 ships against 16. He had faced worse odds during the Mars Rebellion, but never in space. He activated the fleet-wide communication. All ships, this is Colonel Jin. The enemy is coming with everything they have. They expect us to run or surrender. We will do neither. He paused, looking at the faces of his crew on the bridge. They have more ships, better shields, and faster engines. They have every advantage except one. They do not know how to fight an enemy that refuses to lose. Show them what that means. The human fleet did not meet the Scourge head-on. Instead, they scattered, using the moon's gravity and debris field as cover. When Scourge vessels pursued, they found the terrain was not empty. Human Marines had spent the last 6 hours planting surprises. The first Scourge squadron flew into a debris field and triggered a chain of explosions. Magnetic mines, hidden among the wreckage, detonated in sequence. 3 ships were disabled before they could react. They mined the approach vectors, Ha's tactical officer reported. How did they deploy so quickly? Ha did not answer. He simply ordered more ships forward. Mines could be cleared. The humans were delaying, nothing more. But the delays continued. Every approach to the human fleet was trapped. Every clear path led into ambush zones where human ships waited with ready. The Scourge pressed forward, losing ships to mines, traps, and sudden close-range attacks. They are not fighting a fleet battle, Ha realized. They are fighting a guerrilla war in space. It was unheard of. Fleet combat followed established rules: formation, engagement range, shield management. The humans ignored all of it. They hid, ambushed, and ran. Then they turned and attacked again from a different angle. The Scourge could not bring their superior numbers to bear, because they could not find all the human ships at once. While the space battle raged, Colonel Jin executed the second part of his plan. 2,000 Marines deployed to prime surface, targeting the Scourge occupation forces that had landed during the initial invasion. The Scourge controlled 3 major cities and several military installations. Their ground forces were dug in, protected by shield generators and automated defenses. Any conventional assault would be costly and slow. Jin did not plan a conventional assault. Captain commanded the armored battalion, 50 tanks that had been transported from Earth specifically for this mission. The tanks were old-fashioned, with treads instead of hover systems, combustion engines instead of fusion reactors, and main guns that fired explosive shells. By galactic standards, they were museum pieces. Led her battalion in a lightning strike against a Scourge command post outside the capital city. The tanks moved fast, using terrain for cover, appearing suddenly from behind hills and buildings. The Scourge defenders activated their shields and returned fire with plasma weapons. The plasma bolts washed over the tanks, scorching their armor but failing to penetrate. The tanks kept coming. When they reached firing range, gave the order. All units target the shield generators. High explosive rounds, fire. 50 tank guns fired in unison. The shells, simple metal casings filled with chemical explosives, flew through the Scourge shields as if they were not there. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons and fast-moving projectiles. These shells were too slow to trigger the defensive response. The shield generators exploded. The Scourge position was suddenly vulnerable. Second volley, target enemy vehicles. The tanks fired again. Scourge walkers and transport vehicles disintegrated under the bombardment. The enemy formation broke apart in confusion. Marines advanced on foot, securing the position while the tanks provided covering fire. The command post fell in 40 minutes. Staff Sergeant led a different kind of mission. Her squad infiltrated deep behind enemy lines, moving through the ruins of a city that the Scourge had occupied. Their target was a communications relay that coordinated enemy ground forces. Specialty was improvisation. She had trained in demolitions, but she preferred to work with whatever materials were available. As her squad moved through the city, she collected components, Scourge equipment, abandoned technology, even civilian items from destroyed buildings. "Sergeant, what are you building?" one of her Marines asked, watching her work. "An explosive," replied, connecting wires to a power cell. The Scourge use quantum transmitters for communications. Quantum systems are very efficient, but they have one weakness. If you disrupt the quantum entanglement with a specific electromagnetic pulse, the entire network crashes. You can do that with scrap. If you know what you are doing, you can do anything. They reached the communications relay under cover of darkness. Scourge guards patrolled the perimeter, but Squad had learned their patrol patterns. The Marines moved like ghosts, avoiding detection. planted her improvised device at the base of the relay tower. She set the timer for 3 minutes and signaled her squad to fall back. They were 500 meters away when the device detonated. The explosion was small, barely enough to damage the tower structure, but the electromagnetic pulse it generated was perfectly tuned. Across the entire region, Scourge communications went silent. Units could not coordinate. Commands could not be transmitted. The occupation force was suddenly blind and isolated. Jin had timed his main assault to coincide with the communications blackout. Marines hit Scourge positions across the planet simultaneously. Without coordination, the enemy could not respond effectively. Isolated units fought well but were overwhelmed by human tactics. The Marines used artillery to destroy strong points, airstrikes to eliminate enemy reinforcements, and infantry assaults to clear buildings. They set ambushes, created kill zones, and used psychological warfare. One Marine unit started broadcasting human war songs on all frequencies. The music was aggressive, rhythmic, meant to boost morale and intimidate enemies. The Scourge had never encountered anything like it. Some units reported hearing the music and retreating before the humans even arrived. Within 3 days, the Scourge ground presence on Prime was collapsing. Supply lines were cut. Command structures were disrupted. Morale was breaking. Ha watched it all from orbit and felt something he had not experienced in decades: doubt. The humans had inferior technology. They should have been easy to defeat. Yet they turned every disadvantage into an advantage. Their primitive kinetic weapons bypassed shields. Their willingness to take casualties allowed them to make attacks no rational commander would attempt. Their adaptability meant they never fought the same way twice. "We have lost 40% of our ground forces," his officer reported. "The orbital fleet has taken severe damage. Our logistics chain is compromised." Ha stared at the tactical display. He had 300 ships. The humans had maybe 12 still operational. He had overwhelming force. But he was losing. "All forces withdraw from the planet's surface," Ha ordered. "Consolidate the fleet. We retreat to the outer system and regroup." The order was transmitted, and the Scourge began to pull back. It was the first time in centuries that a Scourge invasion force had retreated before achieving total victory. Colonel Jin stood on the surface of Prime, watching the enemy ships rise into the sky and leave the planet. Around him, his Marines cheered. They had won. But Jin did not celebrate. He knew this was only the beginning. The Scourge would return, and next time they would be prepared for human tactics. Still, they had achieved something important. They had shown the galaxy that humans could fight. More importantly, they had shown that humans would fight, even against impossible odds. Commander Al contacted Jin from orbit. "Colonel, the Scourge are leaving the system entirely. You have saved my people." Jin looked at the ruins around him. The beautiful crystal cities were gone, replaced by rubble and ash. Millions had died. The victory was real, but the cost had been terrible. "We bought you time, Commander. Use it well, because they will come back." And they would, but when they did, they would face an enemy they had learned to fear. The reconstruction of Prime began immediately. Human engineering crews worked alongside civilians, clearing rubble and rebuilding critical infrastructure. It was strange work for soldiers trained to destroy, but the Marines adapted as they always did. Colonel Jin walked through the ruins of the capital city with Commander Al. Around them, temporary shelters were being erected. Power was slowly returning to some districts. Children played in the streets, watched over by parents who were still processing the fact that they had survived. "Your people work very hard," Al observed, watching a group of Marines help rebuild a school. "They do not have to do this. The fighting is over." "The mission is not complete until the people are safe," Jin replied. "Fighting is only one part of war. Helping people rebuild is just as important." They walked in silence for a while. Finally, Al asked the question that had been troubling him since the humans arrived. "Why did you help us, Colonel? Your species was isolated by the Galactic Council. We judged you too dangerous, too violent. We locked you away and ignored you for 30 years. You owed us nothing. You could have left us to die." Jin stopped and looked at the commander. "You asked for help, that is enough. But we treated you so poorly." "Yes, you did. The council was wrong to quarantine us. They were afraid of what we might do, so they made us into prisoners." Jin's voice was calm but firm. "But I am not going to let innocent people die because their leaders made bad decisions 30 years ago. Your civilians did not choose to isolate Earth. They did not choose this war. They are just people trying to survive. We help people who need help. That is who we are." Al felt something shift in his understanding. The Galactic Council had seen humanity's capacity for violence and assumed that was all they were. But violence was just a tool. What mattered was how and why it was used. Humans fought because they chose to protect others, not because they were mindless savages. While Reconstruction continued on Prime, the political situation across the galaxy exploded. The Galactic Council convened in emergency session. Representatives from 37 species gathered to discuss what had happened. The debate was heated. "The humans violated the quarantine," one ambassador shouted. "They left their system without authorization. They saved an entire civilization from extinction," another countered. "The quarantine should never have existed in the first place." The council chamber had stood for thousands of years. Its walls were inscribed with the founding principles of galactic civilization: peace, cooperation, rational discourse. War was supposed to be a thing of the past, solved through diplomacy and mutual understanding. Then humanity had shown them that sometimes war was necessary. Sometimes violence was the only answer to violence. Ambassador Bin represented Earth at the council session. He was young, barely 40, but he carried himself with quiet confidence. When he spoke, the chamber fell silent. "For 30 years, you kept my species locked away. You feared us because we are willing to fight. You saw our history of war and assumed we were nothing more than barbarians." Bin's voice was calm, but every word carried weight. "You were afraid we would bring violence to the peaceful galaxy you had built." He paused, letting the words sink in. "You were right to be afraid, but not for the reasons you think." Bin gestured to the holographic display showing the battle. "We are dangerous. We are willing to fight when others will not. We accept casualties that would make your species retreat. We use weapons you consider primitive and tactics you find barbaric." "Then you admit you are a threat," one ambassador interrupted. "No, I admit we are warriors. There is a difference." Bin looked around the chamber. "You built a galaxy based on the idea that violence could be eliminated through reason. It is a beautiful idea. I wish it were true. But the Scourge proved it is not. They came with fire and death, and your reason meant nothing to them." The council members shifted uncomfortably. "They called us because they needed what you lack: the will to fight, the courage to bleed, the refusal to surrender even when losing." Bin's voice grew stronger. "You could have helped them. You have ships, weapons, and resources far beyond what Earth possesses, but you chose politics over people. You let them die rather than risk conflict." "That is not fair." "It is completely fair. You made a choice. We made a different choice. Now you must decide what happens next." The council debated for 3 days. Some species demanded that Earth be placed under even stricter quarantine. Others argued for full membership and alliance. The given a voice as victims of the crisis made their position clear. Humanity had saved them when no one else would. They would stand with Earth, no matter what the council decided. In the end, the council fractured. No consensus could be reached. The quarantine was officially ended, but Earth was not granted full membership. They existed in a strange middle state, not isolated but not fully accepted. Ambassador Bin addressed the council one final time. before returning to Earth. You have made your decision. Earth will respect it. But understand this. We did not help for political gain. We did it because it was right. The next time someone needs help, the next time the galaxy faces a threat that reason cannot stop, we will be there. Not because you ask us, not because we want your approval, but because protecting the innocent is what we do. He left the chamber in silence. 3 months after the Battle of Prime, the Scourge Empire sued for peace. They had continued their campaigns against other systems, but each time they encountered human forces. Earth had sent more ships, more Marines to systems under attack. The pattern repeated. Humans arrived, fought with brutal efficiency, and won. The Scourge learned what they had discovered. Technology alone did not win wars. The willingness to fight, to endure, to sacrifice, these things mattered more. A formal peace treaty was signed. The Scourge from conquered territories and agreed to reparations. It was the first time in their history they had accepted defeat. Colonel Jin was promoted to general and given command of Earth's new expeditionary force. His mission was to assist species threatened by aggression, building alliances through action rather than words. Staff Sergeant became an instructor at the new Galactic Military Academy, a joint venture between Earth and several allied species. Alien officers came to learn human tactics, shocked by how effective simple aggression and improvisation could be. Captain took command of the Armored Division, leading combined human-alien units that mixed Earth's ground warfare expertise with alien technology. Earth's military became legendary across the galaxy. When pirates threatened trade routes, Earth Marines cleared them out. When the Scourge tested the peace treaty, human warships appeared at the border and made it clear the treaty would be enforced. When natural disasters struck alien worlds, human engineers and soldiers arrived to help rebuild. Humanity earned respect not through diplomacy, but through action. On Prime, a monument was erected in the center of the rebuilt capital. It showed a Marine in full combat armor, rifle raised, standing on a pile of rubble. Smoke swirled around the figure, and stars glittered in the background. The inscription was simple, written in both and English. They asked, we answered. Beneath that, in smaller text, in memory of the 1st Contact Battalion and all who stand between the innocent and the darkness. Commander Al attended the dedication ceremony with Colonel Jin. Thousands have gathered, along with representatives from a dozen species. The monument had become a symbol not just of the battle, but of what humanity represented. Do you think the galaxy will ever truly accept your people? Al asked. Jin looked at the crowd. He saw fear in some faces, gratitude in others, respect in many. I do not know. Maybe it does not matter. We are not doing this for acceptance. We are doing it because someone has to. Because someone has to stand and fight. Yes. The ceremony ended with a moment of silence for the fallen, human and alike. Then the crowd dispersed, returning to their lives. The war was over. The rebuilding would take years, but it had begun. Jin returned to Earth a month later, greeted as a hero, but he did not feel like one. He had done what was necessary, nothing more. Good soldiers had died under his command. The victory had been real, but the cost had been heavy. President met with him privately. The galaxy has changed because of what you did, General Jin. Humanity has a place among the stars now. We always had a place, Jin replied. They just tried to deny it to us. What will you do now? Jin looked out the window at the night sky. Somewhere out there, other species were watching Earth, wondering what humans would do next. Some watched with hope, others with fear. We will do what we have always done. We will fight when fighting is needed. We will help when help is asked. And we will never surrender no matter the odds. Smiled, that sounds like humanity. Across the galaxy, a new question echoed through military academies, council chambers, and war rooms. When danger threatened, when conventional forces failed, when hope seemed lost, one phrase was heard more and more. Where are the humans? And the answer was always the same. The humans were there, rising from the smoke, ready to stand between the innocent and the darkness, because someone had to. And humanity had always been willing to be that someone.